We are going to see how to configure CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous deployment in Azure Data Factory. We are making use of Azure DevOps as our Git repository here. Currently, we have a resource group, which is the ADF CI/CD, and it have two data factories and two storage accounts. One is for dev and one is for UAT. And currently both the data factories are empty and there are no pipelines in them. So for testing purpose, in the dev data factory, we are going to create a simple copy pipeline, and that copy pipeline will copy a file from source container to destination container, which is currently present in the dev storage account. And you can see in the dev storage account in the containers, there are actually two containers here, which is the source and the destination. In the source container, we have a simple file which is the emp1.csv, and we are going to copy this file to the destination container in the storage account. So let's try to open the dev data factory and let's try to create a simple pipeline. So once we have created the pipeline, we'll configure the Git repository. We are going to create a pipeline now with the copy activity. And we are also creating the new link service now. Generally, in the real-time scenario, it is recommended to do with Azure Key Vault service. So we need to pass this URL which is present as an endpoint in the storage account, and we need to give the Azure Key Vault, and it is recommended to get the storage account key from the Key Vault. So just for testing purpose, we are creating a link service now. We are going to point out at the source. And now we have configured our source and sink here. So let's try to debug the pipeline for testing purpose. And it got succeeded. And now let's try to see the destination if the file is copied or not. And in the destination, and we can see the file is copied. That's fine. So let's try to configure the Git repository now. And before that, let's try to publish all our pipelines. So even before configuring any of the Git repository, we can still have all the pipelines, and all these pipelines will be copied to the Git. Now let's try to configure the Git repository, and we need to go to manage, and we need to click on the Git configuration, and we need to click on configure. So before configuring the Git, we need to create an account in the Azure DevOps. So for that, we need to click on dev.azure.com, and if you are signing in for new, it will ask you for the email and the registration process. So once you complete the registration process, you will get this screen. So currently it is showing the organization. So any name which is present on the left side is the organization, and we need to create the projects under it. So let's try to create a new project, ADF trial, and we can mention that as the private, and work item, it can be agile or anything. So let's try to give it an agile. While creating the project, by default, it will create a repository for us, and the repository name will be same as the project name. And while we click on the repo here, and we can see this is the repository, which is think like it is a subdirectory, and the main directory is our project. And let's try to create a new repository instead of using the same. Yep. So we created a new repository, which is AD trial repo, and we have two repositories now. And we are going to publish our Azure Data Factory to this repository, AD trial repo. And it will ask you to configure the directory here. So I'm going to switch the directory which I'm currently using. And organization name, as I previously mentioned, the one which is at the top is our organization name. So It is the one which I can name, and we need to select the project name. ADF trial is the project which we just created. Coming to the repository, there are two repositories here, which is the one which is given by default, which is of the project name, and the one which we created. So let's try the one which we created, and collaboration branch. So this will be the main branch. So let's try to keep the same name here. So ADF publish branch. So this is the branch which will currently hold all the ARM templates. So and whenever we are going to publish from the master branch to the live, all the ARM template, the source code will be stored in ADF publish branch. And we can click on apply over here, and this will create an ADF publish branch in the repository. And we can also go to the repository and we can see the content over here. And we can see currently all our information which we have in the data factory, which is been copied over here as a source code. And we can see the link service that we created, and we also have the pipeline copy in which we created. Now it is time to select our current branch. So let's try to just keep the same. Before that, in the Git environment, we can have the multiple number of users. Currently, we have another user which is called uh, Tony here. So this is the sample user which I created to test this. So let's try to go to the ADF CICD. Let's try to open the dev environment here. This might get an error like you need to have access to that repository. So we need to invite this particular user from the repository. As expected, we are receiving the error like invalid Git configuration. It's because Tony is not a member of our project, which is in the Azure DevOps. So let's try inviting the Tony to this project. All we need to do, we need to go to the project here and we need to click on invite and type the Tony here and select the team in which you need to invite. As this is the current project team, we can click on add, and Tony is added to the team successfully. And let's try to go to the uh, Tony's Azure Data Factory and let's try to refresh the page and access this. And we can see we are not getting the error anymore, and we can also see the author, and we can see uh, currently a pipeline. And before that, as we have a user, he need to have a working branch, which is called the feature branch also. So let's try to create a branch for himself. So I am logged in as a Tony user, so I'm creating Tony branch as the name. And whatever the work he is going to do, he is going to do that in his branch. And after that, he needs to create a pull request. And also we can see the pipeline and the data sets in which we have previously created are appearing up here. And whatever the content which we have in the main branch will be automatically being inherited to the feature branch. So let's go to the Tony's branch here and let's try to add some features to this pipeline. Think like there is a new requirement came up and he just need to change the destination over here. So let's go to the sync. Let's try to edit the data set. So this is the container, and the requirement is he just need to add a directory here and he need to do the changes. So I am currently in the Tony's branch. I went to the data set and I'm creating a name here. So destination is my folder. So whenever I do a copy here, it need to create a destination folder and it need to copy the file here. And we can see we currently the publish option is disabled. It's because we can only do the publish from the main branch. Currently he need to click on save all so that all his work will be saved. And after that he need to push the content to the main branch. For that he need to do a pull request. And we can see there is an option called create pull request so that all the content and all the features which are added by the Tony will be pushed to the main branch. And you can see updating the data set. Updating the data set is content. Here I have added the directory to copy, And there are two reviews over here, which can be the optional and which can be the required. So I'll mention Shanmugh name as a required, and let's try to create a pull request. Now it must be approved by this user so that it will be merged to the main branch. So let's try to go to the Shanmugh's tab here, and let's try to click on the repo, and we can see the pull request option. We need to click on the pull request, and we can see there is a pull request, which is the work done by the Tony to add a directory to the pipeline. And we can click on approve over here. And as soon as we approve, an email also will be triggered and it will be sent to the Tony. And we can also complete the pull request so that the changes will be merged to the main branch. And we can see complete merge. And also another email will be triggered to Tony stating that the changes which you have done will be is merged to the main branch by Shanmugh. And let's go to the Tony branch here, and we can see the email is already triggered, which is PR is the pull request. And we can see the changes are approved and the changes are completed, and it is being merged to the main branch. So let's go to the main branch over here from the Tony's account, and we can see in the main branch, and it is still loading. Yep. And we can see in the main branch in the sync in the data set, and we can see the destination is now present. And here with we can see how we are working in a Git environment. Now, and we need to click on the publish option here so that all the changes will be merged to the live branch. And we can see switch to the live mode, and currently we can only see the pipeline, but when we go to the data set we can see we are not seeing any changes made by Tony here. It's because we didn't do a publish. So all we need to do is we need to go to the main branch and we need to click on publish. So when we click on the publish in the backend, it will create an ARM template and it will store that in ADF publish branch. And when we click on this, and we can see here on the top, while it is showing the notification, it will also show something like creating ARM template. And we can see generating ARM template. So all the changes which we have done will be created as an ARM template, and that will be stored in ADF publish. And that will be our the live branch. Currently, when we click on switch to the live mode, and we click on the pipeline and the destination dataset, and there we can see the destination folder is been added. Now, how we have currently the continuous integration been configured, and let's see how to configure the continuous deployment. It means all the changes which we have done here will be copied to the UAD environment. So let's go to ADF CICD, and we can see there is a data factory for UAD, and let's try to launch the data factory. Currently this data factory is completely empty and we don't have any pipeline over here. Currently we can see the UAD data factory is up. Data factory is completely empty. It's because we haven't created anything over here. Now it's time to do a deployment from the dev environment to UAD environment. So coming to the real-time scenario, we are not going to do any of the pipeline from the scratch. It's because in real time we can have nearly 100 to 200 pipelines. So we can't do everything from the scratch. So we need to do the continuous deployment over here. So let's go to the Shanmugh's branch and let's try to do the deployment. So to do the continuous deployment, we need to click on pipelines and we need to click on releases, and it will ask us to create a pipeline. It is actually the pipeline for the release. It is not anything related to the pipelines in which we have in the Azure Data Factory. So we need to click on the new pipeline, and there are two things over here. One is the artifacts and one is the stages. So artifact is something which will hold our ARM templates and things so that all the code will be present in the artifact itself. So let's try to choose our artifact. So our source is containing in the Azure repos, and our project name is ADF trial, and the repository name is ADF trial repo. And it will ask for the branch which is having the source code, which is our ARM template. So ADF publish branch is something we are going to publish from the master. So all the code will be present in ADF publish. And it will also create the source alias by default. You can click on add here. Now we need to click on the stage. Stages are something the environments in which we are going to deploy. So we can add the multiple stages over here. It can be UAT, it can be prod. For now, let's try to create a UAT stage. Let's try to create an empty job. So the job is to deploy in UAT environment. Let's try to just give the name as UAT, and we are going to create a job here, agent job. So agent is something which will take the responsibility to do the deployment. Currently, there are two types of agents over here. One is the Microsoft agent, and the second one is the self-hosted one. So we need to define our deployment for an agent. So we need to give a task to this particular agent. So the task is we need to going to deploy. We need to deploy ARM template deployment, and we need to click on this. So we need to select what is the resource ARM group, and we need to select the subscription over here, which is the pay as you go. We need to click on authorize. So in the back end, it will create a service principal, and the service principal will be able to access our dev environment and the UAT environment. So it is basically giving the permission to access the dev and UAT. So all the resources will be copied from the dev and they will be dumped to the UAT environment. And our resource group is ADF CICD, and the location can be East US, which is nearby to you. And coming to the template, we need to choose where our source code is actually present. So our source code is present in ADF trial repo, which is the repository. And this is our data factory name. It will create as folder. So we need to choose ARM template for factory. So this is holding all the information of our pipelines and the one which we have defined in the dev environment. So let's try to define the template parameters. So what exactly this defines is if I deployed my all the pipelines to my dev to UAT environment, the pipelines which are in the UAT environment should not point out to the storage account which is present in my dev environment. I need to change the storage account of dev to UAT. For that, we are going to take care of the templates over here. So we need to override those templates. So when we click on the three dots over here, it will show what are the templates in which we need to override. The first one is the data factory name. So we are going to target the UAT East US 01. So let's just check this is our UAT data factory. And we can see this is our UAT data factory name. And here we need to define the account key and the endpoint of UAT storage account. As I mentioned previously, the recommended way would be having a key vault, and we can directly define the secret name here. So as we are not having anything over here, let's try to manually copy paste the access key along with the endpoint. So let's go to the UAT storage account. Let's click on the access keys. So this is the account key. Let's copy the key and paste in this parameter. So let's also replace the link of the endpoint. We need to go to the storage account of the UAT and we need to click on endpoints here, and we need to find the endpoint of the data lake. And we are going to do the deployment mode as an incremental. So when we do the second release, it will just see the changes which we have done to our environment, and it will deploy the changes to the new environment on an incremental fashion. And all we need to do is we need to click on the save. So I'm fine with the same folder. It is saved. Now it's time to create the release, and we need to choose the UAT name here, create, and we can see the release has been created. So all the artifacts will be now deployed to the UAT environment. And we can see all the pipelines which we have done in the dev environment are now successfully deployed to the UAT. And we can see all the stages were fine. So let's go to the UAT data factory. Our UAT data factory is now loaded, and when we click on other, and we can see the same pipelines which we have done in our dev environment are now reflecting in our UAT. So this means the deployment is successful. And now if we are trying to execute this pipeline, it should copy the contents from storage accounts of UAT, but not from dev. It's because we changed the parameters while we are creating the release pipeline. And before running this pipeline, let's go to the storage account of UAT. And inside the UAT, we actually need to create two containers, which is the source and the destination. It's because in the pipeline level, the pipeline is copying from the source container to the destination, which is having an emp1.csv in the source. So we are creating a source container, and let's also create a destination. Now in the source container, we need to upload emp1.csv file, and we have the file uploaded in the source. Now if we execute this pipeline, it should copy the source from this UAT storage account. And when we click on debug, let's try to check that. And here we can see the pipeline is executed successfully. And let's try to check the destination. And here we can see the file is copied from the source to destination. So tomorrow, if there is a new requirement to Tony here, so he is the one who works on this. So we need to go to the Git here, and he will go to his Tony's branch. And if there is a new requirement to create a new pipeline, for example, for testing purpose, let's just try to create a pipeline with a wait activity, and let's try to deploy that to the UAT. So we are going to create a new pipeline just for testing purpose. So this is the pipeline which will hold the wait activity. So this is the wait activity, and here you can see I cannot directly publish. It's because first I need to save this, and I need to create a pull request. So I'm going to save this, and you can see it is saved in the Git, and I need to create a pull request so that once the pull request is getting accepted, it will go to the main branch. So all the changes will be merged to the main branch. So I can add the reviewer as the same person, Shanmugh, and I can create the pull request. So once you created the pull request, your lead or the manager will go to the Azure DevOps, and they'll click on the repos, and we need to click on the pull request. So they will identify, so this is the new feature in which we got, and he done the changes, and he now want to pull that to the main branch. So need to click on approve and complete so that the changes will be merged to the main branch. And let's go to the Tony's profile over here, and let's try to open the dev data factory, and let's go to the main branch. And we can see the changes which is done by Tony are reflecting here as the pull request is successfully completed. And we also have two emails triggered over here. which is stating that the changes which you have done were approved and he have completed the pull request. And now it's time to publish these changes to the a live branch. So let's go to dev environment, and we need to go to the main branch and we need to click on publish. So these changes will be now deployed to the ARM template, which is present in the ADF publish branch. And we can see this is the change in which you have done. We need to click on OK. And here it will show the changes in which we done. And this will be generated as an ARM template. And when we click on here, and let's try to switch to the live mode, and we can see two pipelines, the one which Tony has just created. Now it's time to deploy these changes from the dev to UAD environment. For that, we need to just create a new pipeline release, or we can also utilize the same release. In between, I tried another release here. So let's try to create a release using the same pipeline. And we can also enter the description as added pipeline, and we can click on create. You can see the release 3 has been created, and we can also click on deploy. So the changes will be deployed to the UAD environment. Yeah, and we can see the release pipeline is successful and the changes are published to the UAD environment. So let's go to the UAD data factory, and when we click on refresh here, we need to expect two pipelines, which are the wait pipeline which has been created by Tony. Yep. And we can see another pipeline is deployed here. So this is the procedure for continuous integration and continuous deployment.